China will impose a 125% tariff on US goods, up from 84% as the trade war between the premier geopolitical powers escalates. It threatens to wreak severe damage on both nations and will send shockwaves worldwide. And Australia could be caught right in the middle. Joining me live is Malcolm Davis, Senior Analyst of Defence Strategy and National Security at ASPI. It's good to see you, Malcolm. Thanks so much for joining us. I want to throw this at you. Rabobank global strategist Michael Every said, "We are now in an era of economic statecraft where it's about national security and national interest rather than inflation or a balanced budget." He says fundamentally it will come down to the US trying to set terms to China, decouple where it can, and then saying to everyone else globally, in particular the West like Australia, are you with us or not? Do you agree with that?
I think that's a fair assessment, and I think that we are in very dangerous times because essentially neither side, the US or China, can keep on escalating indefinitely because it then becomes destructive to their own interests. So I think what you will see is that at a certain point, China will start to respond asymmetrically, which will basically mean rather than imposing higher tariffs when the US imposes additional tariffs on it, you might see China doing something else in some other area of statecraft. And it could be in foreign policy, it could be in military and defense terms. We're all watching what China's doing in regards to Taiwan, for example. So I think that there's increasingly an air of mutual economic destruction here that is emerging between the United States and China, and that's going to affect everyone else globally, but also here in the region. We're going to be affected by it as well.
Yeah, so do you think that if this continues, the US may start pressuring Australia to start moving away from China?
Well, I think we already have moved away from China in defence terms. I mean, we don't have a strong relationship with China in defence terms. We see them quite correctly as an adversary. But I think where we could come under pressure from Washington is moving away from them in trade terms. And I think that will be a challenge for us because, China is our biggest trading partner. And whilst I think it's in Australia's interest to diversify its trade away from China so that we're not so totally reliant on China for trade and prosperity, to actually move aggressively away from China may find some pushback amongst the business community here in Australia. So I think that will be a challenge for us going forward. And I think that, that whichever party wins in May better be ready for that.
We had that so-called outstretched hand from China on trade to Australia since the US started imposing tariffs on the world. How has this changed the dynamic in a geopolitical sense in the Indo-Pacific?
We were never going to accept that outstretched hand because I think we saw it for what it was, which was a Chinese attempt to essentially undermine US alliance structures in the Indo-Pacific region. We understood what that was all about. So that was quite the reason why, quite rightly, the Prime Minister said, no, we're not going to take that outstretched hand. But I think what you could see is as this contest intensifies, not only are we going to get more pressure from Washington, D.C. to move away from China, we'll get more pressure from China to essentially take the outstretched hand, or it might become a clenched fist. And I think that, we've seen, for example, the Chinese deploy a powerful naval task force around our shores. They can do that again just to send the message and say, look, you better take our protection or else. So I do think that there is a risk here that both sides, China and the United States, see not just Australia but other Indo-Pacific allies as prizes, and both sides start to pressure us for essentially seeking closer relations.
Malcolm, we've got 30 seconds, but I want to ask you, who do you expect to blink first when it comes to China and the US, and who do you think is holding the most cards in this scenario?
I don't see how it can be Xi Jinping, because if he blinks first, he loses credibility and authority. And above all else, that's what he values. He wants to be the more powerful paramount leader than Mao Zedong. And if he blinks, he will never get that. He quite likely could be removed from power. Nor do I see Trump necessarily blinking, but he may blink before Xi. So it's a question of how he then sells that and what are the implications if he does blink first in terms of China and Russia then exploiting a perceived weakness on the part of the Trump administration.
Dr. Malcolm Davis, appreciate your time. Great to talk to you as always. Thank you so much. Have a good weekend.
Thank you.